Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. Ghost Magic Show 4026, if that is your real name. He writes, he puts a comment down below. He says, can you talk about Glorpy the Haunted Hank? I freak more people out with that effect, and it is. I remember, now there's two different types of Glorpies or Haunted Hanks. Actually, I'm going to try to make a distinction. There's the solid ghost, or it, and then there is the Haunted Hank, or Glorpy. So there's two different ones. And the or the solid ghost, here's what happens. You take a handkerchief. In my case, it was white. Here I am, I'm 14 years old, and I'm going to the Yogi Magic Mart. And Dave Raymer demonstrates this thing. If you guys remember Dave Raymer. So Dave Raymer demonstrates this thing. It's a white handkerchief. It's folded. And then a spoon is tapped. Like this. Something solid is in there. But the handkerchief is shown and it's empty. And I fell in love with this. I got it. I took it home. I learned it. I started performing it at school for friends. It really does freak people out. It's an effect that has its roots in modern spiritualism. That's why it freaks people out, because the essence of it is there is a manifestation of an invisible entity. And I think people intuitively and viscerally pick up on this, even if you don't know that that's what the effect is. And that is what the effect is. You're manifesting an entity. And so it has a tendency to freak people out, just as Ghost Magic Show pointed out. And then there is the version that he's referring to, which is Glorpy. In Glorpy, the same thing occurs more or less. You've got the handkerchief, you fold the handkerchief, but in this case, the handkerchief, there's movement. There's movement. One of the best effects I've ever seen with Glorpy, you show something. It could be a business card, it could be a slate, it could be anything that you can write on. You show it blank. You put it into the folds of the handkerchief. You take a pen or a pencil or a chalk, and you put that in, and there's movement. And when you remove it, there's something written on it. I love that application for Glorpy. But let me give you some history of Glorpy and the Haunted Hank, so you understand where it came from. It originated on the stage. And by the way, there is an excellent article by Max Maven. It's called A Brief History of It by Max Maven, published in Magic Magazine, Volume 9, Number 9, May 2000, page 78. And there's also a version of actually the It, or the Solid Ghost, in the same magazine that's entirely, well, it's not entirely improvisational, but it doesn't involve any gimmicked handkerchief whatsoever. So it's called Coney Island Casper by Andrew Martin. I'm going to tell you more about that in just a few minutes. So let me give you the history of Glorpy and the Haunted Hank. The stage version in the late 1800s, one of my favorite performers, one of my inspirations. There's a book about her that I think I've reviewed on this site. If you go back to the earliest post that I ever made before I ever started doing this vlog, but the earliest post on YouTube, I did a presentation on Anna Eva Faye. I think she was magnificent. I never met her, never knew her. She passed away long before I was born, but her life story is an inspiration to me. Apparently, Anna Eva Faye was the first to do the dancing handkerchief on stage. You all remember the dancing handkerchief. You tie a knot in a borrowed handkerchief, and it begins to, it animates. It animates. So she's the first to do this. In the 1920s, Al Baker came up with the idea of the untying silk. This is a silk handkerchief. You tie a knot in it, and the silk unties itself. Beautiful effect. The serpentine silk was later invented in 1940 by John Albenice. And so those effects, those are stage effects or platform effects or parlor effects. And they really set the stage for what was to come. In 1957, so 1940, from the turn of the last century, 1800s, up through 1940, you have these platform handkerchief effects. Now remember, back in these periods, people carried handkerchiefs around with them. It was a common thing. So to borrow a handkerchief was a very easy thing to do, and then to perform magic with it was astounding. So, and of course, Blackstone Sr. made a signature effect out of the dancing handkerchief. Many other performers did as well. But in 1957, Dik Van Brummer came up with the solid ghost, also referred to as It. Published in Gen magazine, November 1957, Volume 13, Number 7, page 507. This particular version was the version where you fold the handkerchief and you tap and there's something solid in it. So there wasn't movement, but there was that tap, which I think is pretty eerie. I think it's still a very good effect. By the way, that effect is described and explained in detail in Mark Wilson's course in magic. So don't miss that. Mark Wilson's course in magic. In 1958, the solid ghost, referred to as It, November 1958, Linking Ring. 1962, George Blake's Haunted Hank. This is the version that later became Glorpy. Okay, in this version, you fold the handkerchief and there's movement. You see movement. So that originated in 1962 by George Blake. In 1963, 1 year later, Madblood Creations, Bill Madden and Bernie Trueblood came up with Glorpy, also known as the Gerkulating Ghost. Note the name, the Gerkulating Ghost. In other words, it's a manifestation of a ghost or a spirit. Glorpy was declared the trick of the Millennium by Genii magazine. Now, there are some relationships that I want to point out here. I think, I'm a platform and stage performer. And the idea of taking a handkerchief, laying it down and having it animate is a beautiful thing to me. Now that description might lead you to think zombie. The difference between zombie and a stage or platform version of Glorpy is that zombie's a floating ball. The ball, everyone sees the ball, everyone sees what color it is, everyone sees it animate. But when it comes to Glorpy or another version of it, there's something mysterious going on. It's an empty handkerchief. It's an empty handkerchief that is, something is underneath of it, but you don't see it. And I think that mystery adds a great deal to the effect. Now, I want to direct you to something. If you're a platform or stage performer, if you're a parlor performer, take a look at The Thing by Bill Abbott. The Thing by Bill Abbott. First of all, Bill Abbott is a brilliant performer, is a great entertainer. He's funny, he's mysterious, he's everything every magician ought to be. So take a look at Bill Abbott's work in general, but The Thing in particular. Glorpy, the Haunted Hank, and The Thing all create movement or a substance via an invisible entity, whereas the zombie, which is a similar effect, creates that same movement, but it's a ball, and everyone knows it's a ball. Now, as I told you about this before, in the Mark Wilson course in magic, it's referred to as the Phantom, and it's a very good. Now, the Coney Island Casper by Andrew Martin uses an unprepared handkerchief. Published in Magic Magazine, Volume 9, Number 9, May 2000, The Solid Ghost. So take a look at that. Now, it was actually John Rackerbalmer who was preparing the magazine, and wanted to provide some history to the effect. So he contacted Max Maven to investigate the history of Glorpy, and that's where this information comes from. So again, you know, we owe Max Maven for giving us this history. So thank you, Max Maven. Thank you so much, Ghost Magic Show, for asking for this. I love the effect. I agree with you. It's an underestimated effect. It freaks people out. It truly does. So thank you so much for asking. Thank you for joining me. Please comment down below. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. Have a great day, everyone.